Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Traditional Astrology Podcast. I'm Samantha Hammer, and today we're going to be going over astrological family trees. This is actually modeled after a talk that I gave for the Association of Young Astrologers back in September of 2024. And I decided to re-record it so I could add a couple more things and refine it, but it'll be kind of in constant flux, I think, because if you kind of stay tuned to these videos and podcasts that are going to be coming out, it's kind of an ever-changing, kind of ever-evolving project. And I thought it would be really important to put out around the holiday times. Um, Holiday season here upon us. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow here in America. And so I kind of want to just set an intention for this ongoing work overall. So, whatever angle you're coming from, family wise, whatever made you curious enough to click on anything relating to the um, astrology of family trees, I hope that it inspires you to find the unique shared qualities that exist within your family. And I hope it helps you feel connected to the parts of you and to the people that are part of you that aren't here anymore and have yet to come. And this world, especially during the holidays, can be very dark and confusing and lonely. And I hope that in whatever capacity you can, that if you decide to kind of embark on a journey of astrology overall, even, if your family is still around, I just hope that it brings you healing of any shape or kind. And astrology is just such a beautiful thing in that the astrologer can really interpret the pieces of the most challenging relationships, especially family wise. Um, because they know where to look. If the astrologer is at least skilled enough, they can even help you find ways to remedy them. And so I hope this work can bring you remedy overall in some capacity. So, yeah, with that, I just wanted to set a little intention for here on out. This work is ultimately intended to create better familial understanding. So, with that, let's get into it. So, welcome to the Astrology of Family Trees. So, I wanted to start with a story as to what brought me into this work today. And it basically started right when I first got into astrology because I had been gathering like everyone's chart who would give it to me. And so it was basically maybe within the first couple months of studying traditional astrology, I noticed this really insane pattern in my immediate family. And what it starts with my grandparents. So back in the 60s, they were told that they were not going to be able to have children of their own naturally. So they decided to adopt. And so they adopted my uncle. And then a couple years later, my mom. So my uncle, he was born a Sagittarius sun and a Sagittarius moon. My mom was born a Aries sun and Cancer moon. And as miracles would have it, the doctors were wrong, and my grandparents end up having a naturally born son, my uncle, who's born a Sagittarius sun and a Sagittarius moon. And here we go again. Another daughter is born. My aunt born an Aries sun and a Cancer moon. That blew my mind because what we're talking about at that point is that my grandparents, who are absolutely not astrologers or anything, they couldn't care less, to a degree, especially when adopting a child, you're not really looking at that stuff. And like how it's not even plannable, you know what I mean? It's so crazy. And I'm still at a loss for words about it to this day. I don't know what the feeling is, but I just know it's the feeling of awe and excitement of what the implications of astrology really mean um, can just like leave you dumbfounded on a certain level. And so, yes, in sequential order, my grandparents, like sun and moon wise, adopted the children that they would one day naturally have, astrologically speaking. It's just a really cool, very rare thing. So I thought, and so we're going to kind of get into some examples and some logic over what to look for in your own family's charts so you can start putting the pieces together on your end of things. And I cannot wait to see what you guys find. So thank you for listening to my story. These are the family members' charts right here. And one other little detail about this story too is that both of the sons have the moon, and not only in the same sign, but in the same degree of Sagittarius. They're both different minutes, but Sagittarius at 23 degrees. That is insane. So, a quick overview. I have simmered down my findings into categories, but this is not meant to limit what can possibly present in your family storylines. These categories represent the reoccurring themes that have presented themselves, let's say, enough times for me to not ignore this very subject we're here today to discuss. So, we'll review charts, like I said, to provide examples of this phenomenon. And you'll have to be patient and work with me. I'm still kind of evaluating and fine tuning this process of presentation because it's been a tremendous effort to not come off looking or sounding like this lovely Charlie meme. Okay, so here we go. These are the categories that I'd like to present to you guys as things to look for in the natal chart of your family members so you can start building your own family trees. So, if you have a time of birth, we're going to be looking at what I'm calling the big six. And this is going to include inherited sun signs, inherited moon signs, inherited ascendant signs, inherited planetary sign placement, AKA, or and decans. I'm like kind of grouping those together. Inherited dignity and inherited house position. If you are not allotted a birth time, you can go ahead and turn your big six into a big four. And you're going to look at inherited sun signs, inherited moon signs, inherited planetary sign placements and decans, and then inherited dignity. Also, you should, as an astrologer, always just not be looking at a cuspy moon if there's no exact birth time. So make sure to double down. You might have to draw up two charts for some family members if the chart has a moon that is within the first 6 degrees or the last 6 degrees of a sign, because there's a possibility of that moon being in the sign before or after the one that you're looking at in your chart. So definitely do your best to maybe double up on charts for some family members, or just make at least a note in your research that you're finding that there is a possibility of the moon being this or that. So the logic behind these categories are going to be because the sun, moon, and rising signs, when given an exact birth time, these placements are safe bets. They don't retrograde. Their motion and pace are fixed and unchanging. They trek through the sky like clockwork, lending us a sturdy baseline from which to measure this work, which is already hard to measure without getting lost in the weeds at times when we're going for trees. Okay. And then, so planetary placements, positions, and dignity. These are what I've just found most in the examples that I've seen within my own family and clients, colleagues, coworkers, and celebrities. These categories can speak to an eerily accurate number of inherited personal traits and provide quite a bit of information without a proper birth time, making this work more available for people who won't ever really be able to find an exact time of birth for some of their family members. So, as long as you have an exact birth date and location, you should be good to go to do at least some digging. Okay, and now here are the examples. So, our first chart example, here we have the charts of a great grandfather, a grandfather, dad, and a son. Please note that the charts here with little star icons are going to denote a noon chart because I don't have an exact birth time. But with these second two charts, the dad and the sun, I do have exact birth times. So we're going to be kind of like mixing and matching our big six and big four where it's applicable. Okay. So looking to inherited sun and moon signs, as you can see, if you're watching video, sun in Cancer gets passed down through four generations. The great grandfather and the grandfather also have a moon in Leo. Inherited dignity, we can see that the grandfather and dad have Jupiter in domicile. The dad and son have Saturn in domicile. The great grandfather, dad, and son all have Venus in fall in Virgo. Inherited planetary placements, signs, and decans. All suns are in Cancer 3, decan speaking. The grandfather and son have Mars at 29 degrees Leo. So, same exact degree. Grandfather and the son have Mercury in Leo 3, just a degree apart, so very close to one another. The dad and the son have Saturn in Aquarius 1. And the great grandfather, dad, and son all have Venus in Virgo, like I said about it being in fall. Other things to note, the sun has a sun at 22 degrees of Cancer, which is where the great grandfather has his Mercury. The great grandfather has Jupiter at 9 Aquarius, which is where the dad has his Saturn. The grandfather and son have Mars at 29 degrees Leo, and the great grandpa has his Mars at 29 degrees Scorpio. So we're seeing a 29th degree signature of different fixed signs getting kind of handed down in this sequence of family members. The great grandfather and dad have the sun in Saturn's bound of Cancer. And then the grandfather and son have the sun in Jupiter's bound of Cancer. So that's really interesting as well, because that means that within that decan, they are actually really close by degree. Moving on to our second example. Let's minimize this. Okay, so we have another four charts ranging from grandpa, dad, daughter, and son. So the inherited sun and moon, these charts all have sun in Leo. The inherited ascendant sign of this is, these are all timed exact charts. The grandpa and son have Libra ascendant, and then the dad and daughter, I just wanted to include this. The dad and daughter have the ruler of the ascendant in the first house. They're different ascendant signs, though. Inherited planetary placement, signs, and decans. All of these suns are in Leo 2, besides the sun, which has his in Leo 1. Inherited dignity. All of them have the sun in Leo, so that's in domicile. But with the grandpa and son, the grandpa has the moon in exaltation in Taurus, and the son has the moon in domicile in Cancer. The dad and the daughter both have their ascendant rulers in domicile. Inherited planetary house and placements. The dad and daughter both have Mercury in the first and the out of sect luminary in the first. Mercury is within 1 degree of the ascendant in both of their charts. And then the daughter and son both have Saturn in the 7th. Grandpa and son have the sun in the 11th house. So we have not only a sun in Leo passed down, but because they share the rising sign as well, their sons are going to end up in the same houses. Other things to note is that the grandpa, dad, and daughter have their ascendant rulers in angular houses and have moons and earth signs. The grandpa and daughter both have Jupiter and Venus in one sign. The grandpa, dad, and son have the nodes in Pisces, Virgo. The grandpa and son have the nodes in the same sign and house, whereas the dad is in the opposite node in the same houses, though. Okay. So for our next example, we are looking at five charts. Um, so we're going with the dad, a son, and a daughter, and then the son's two children, who I've titled grandson one and grandson two. So this is a really interesting example. If we look to the inherited sun and moon, the dad and son both have sun in Gemini. The inherited dignity, dad and grandson two have Jupiter and Pisces in domicile. The son and daughter have the moon in domicile and exaltation. The dad, son, and grandson one have Mars in fall. Looking to inherited planetary house placement, the son and daughter have moon in the first house. The dad and grandson have two, I'm sorry, dad and grandson two have Mars in the 11th house. And son and grandson two have Mars in the 12th house. I messed that up. I'll edit it later. It's grandson one and son have Mars in Cancer, or Mars in the 12th, and then the dad and grandson too have it in the 11th. My apologies. Other things to note, I'm sorry, inherited planetary placement by sign and decans. The dad has Venus in Cancer 3. The son has Moon in Cancer 3. The daughter has the IC in Cancer 3. Grandson 1 has Mars in Cancer 3. Grandson 2 has Mercury in Cancer 3. And all of them are within the same term and bound because they're all within like 2 degrees of each other. That is very, very wild. And the story behind this chart is very interesting because this son that we're looking at had a mother who passed away during his birth, and his dad never really recovered. And it was like really sad. So the person who I spoke with, you know, we were kind of contemplating what is really possible of being passed down within the astrology of charts. Like, is grief able to be kind of made a signature within the chart and within the life of those that come after us in familial order? It's like a really interesting thing to maybe consider. Okay, for our next example, we're looking at three charts of a mom, daughter, and son. So, inherited sun and moon wise, the mom and son have Cancer moon. Inherited ascendant signs, the mom and daughter are both Leo rising. Inherited planetary placement signs and decans, the mom and son have the moon in Cancer 3, both at 22 degrees. So, same exact degree. Again, we have another family with moon being passed down to or in the same degree, like to the degree. That's absolutely wild. The mom and daughter have Mars in Gemini. Inherited dignity speaking, the mom and son, I'm sorry, the mom has sun exalted in Aries. The daughter and son have the sun in domicile. The mom and son have moon in domicile in Cancer. And then the daughter has Saturn in domicile and the son has Saturn in fall. Inherited planetary house and placements, or inherited planetary house placement. Mom and daughter both have sons in dignified houses, daughter the first house, and the mom the 10th house. So, the karmic implications, meeting traditional astrology sort of technique. I heard this quote from my teacher, Austin Kopic, and he says, using a karmic model simplifies the idea that virtually all of the natal chart represents our karma earned at some point, even times before this one. Remember that not all karma is bad. It is inertia or momentum of actions. If you have caused enough harm in a particular area, it doesn't just stop. If you've caused something good, if you've helped or caused learning or joy, that doesn't just stop. That has a momentum. And the contention and a number of powerful and influential ways of thinking is that this momentum and its effects that in themselves become causes continue not just throughout one's life, but throughout a cascade of lives. So, this idea that seeing perhaps the karmic of our past actions and current actions are shown in the chart, this has a lot to do with potentially the relationships that we're here to, make right potentially within our families. And so I think this karmic implication is something worth utilizing when doing any ancestral work or lineage work. And I hope that if any of you decide to go off and explore this with your own family, keeping that stuff in mind, I think will be very helpful and lead to meaningful change or what have you. And you are invited to do this work. Sorry. So please, I really, really, really encourage everyone to take a look and see what you see in your families. And please do not be mistaken that this stuff only applies to your own flesh and blood. Another talk for another day is that this absolutely applies to your chosen family and your friends. These things are absolutely repeated within my husband and best friend. It doesn't really ever seem to stop. And it's really interesting. It's almost like we're attracting a certain type of human via our placements or something. So, yeah. And other categories that I didn't want to touch on today, such as inherited nodes, inherited moon phase, inherited outer planet placements, inherited retrograde cycles, and beyond. I have gotten so many good examples from so many people, from my classes and colleagues and things like that, with so many cool stories. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this work just yet. This is just really the beginning. And so if this interests you, please don't be shy. Reach out. I would love to hear from you and see what you're finding as well. Thank you.